Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. Welcome to the webinar. And first things first, the idea of this webinar was to make it live. However, considering that I am not a tech person and technology is really not my thing, I decided to pre-record it in order to not to make you wait until I figure out how to do a certain thing on my computer. So I think it's going to be better this way. Next time, I'm going to go live and I will try to handle it with all the consequences that it may have. But this time, I'm going to send you a pre-recorded video of this webinar. Anyway, most of you who texted me asking about the webinar said that you are interested in watching the replay. So I think it's gonna be also beneficial for those of you who want to do that. Okay, so I want to start with a few words about me. My name is Magda. I have been an English teacher for a decade already. And currently I'm living in Spain, where I have worked with Spanish soldiers for the last 4 years and preparing them for the STANAG level 2 and 3 exams. So that's kind of my jam. And I would like, in this webinar, I would like to share with you my expertise in that area and give you some last minute tips because you might be taking the exam really soon. So I would like to give you some piece of advice. After the webinar, let me know if this piece of advice was useful and if you found something interesting in this webinar, if it was helpful, if you have any further questions, please let me know. I really want to get your feedback. I really want to know if it was helpful. Okay, so let's jump into the first one. The first tip that I've got for you today is to plan and practice your presentation. In Spain, we call this part BORE, which stands for biography, occupation, relaxation, and education. I think in Poland, where most of the people who signed up for the webinar are from, we don't use that term. There is just the initial part of the conversation that you're having with the examiner. But what I want you to do is to prepare for this part, okay? Because this is the first impression that you're going to make, and you can only make the first impression once. So do your best with this part, and I've got some particular tips of what you can do. First of all, think about your life as if it was a timeline, okay? And I drew a picture in the slide of a timeline with some most important events. And I want you to list them, list the most important dates, list the areas of your life, like where something important happened, okay? And while you're doing it, think about your military career, about your private life, about some successful moments, moments when you joined the army, moments when you were promoted, the moment when you had your first child, all these kind of things, okay? Because you're going to talk about them with the examiner. So you need to know what to talk about, okay? You need to have a plan. Then list vocabulary, phrasal verbs, collocations, expressions that you like to use in this part, okay? And the most important thing, do not learn it by heart. Please don't do that, okay? Because first of all, it's gonna sound unnatural. And second of all, the examiners are gonna see it, feel it, and you're not going to do yourself a favor with that. So stay away from that idea. If it crosses your mind, please don't. All right. Number 2, use effective writing cycle and discussion clock tools. These are some tools that I use with my students when I prepare them for writing essays. I know that not all of you are going to write essays in your exams, but still it might be useful for the part of you who are going to do that. So, but anyway, like effective writing cycle is not useful just for essays. This one is useful and applicable to all types of writings. So we've got 5 steps that I want you to follow when you're preparing your writing. 5 when you're doing it and you're going to get feedback from your teacher if you're going to get some corrections, and 4 if you're doing it in the exam situation. So let's go through them together. Number 1 sounds very basic, but you need to understand the task. Okay, it doesn't mean just read the task. Understand the situation. Understand if you need to write your writing in present, past, future. Okay, you need to feel the situation. Number 2 is to plan it. I know that you have heard that probably from all your teachers. We always keep saying same thing over and over again. And that's why, because it's very important, okay? You really need to plan your writing. You cannot just sit down and listen to your stream of consciousness and write whatever comes to your mind. No, that's not gonna work. I want you to plan your writing in a dual way. I want you to plan the content, and I want you to plan the vocabulary and grammar that you're going to use. Content means some ideas that you might have, okay? Everything that you want to include, use the bullet points, use the mind map, some visual ideas, like whatever works for you, but do it, okay? Same thing with vocabulary. Think if you have learned some interesting expressions related to that topic and list them so that you don't forget to use them in your text. Then, how long should it take you? Well, I would say planning should take you from 5 to 10 minutes, no more than that, but no less than 5, okay? Give it some time. I promise that it's going to improve the quality of your writing. Number 3 is to actually write your text. There's not much to add in that. You have to write your text. But number 4 is crucial here. You gotta edit your text, okay? Many students, when they finish their writing, they're like, oh God, I'm done, send, okay? Don't do that. Like, give yourself a chance to catch all the silly mistakes that you might have committed and find them, especially if you have a tendency to make certain types of mistakes, like spelling mistakes, forgetting about an S in the third person of present simple, or whatever is your thing. Identify those things. How can you identify it? Check your previous writings. Check if there are any mistakes that keep repeating. Gerund and infinitive is a huge thing. And check if you keep making same mistakes over and over again. And these are the mistakes that you should look for in your writing. Try to spot them. Okay, this is the moment to spot them, correct them, and this way you're not going to lose points in a silly way. And number 5 is for those of you who are going to send your writing to a teacher, so not in the exam situation, but before. When you get feedback from your teacher, it's not like, oh, okay, nice. No, like you're supposed to read the comments and rewrite your text, okay? Don't underestimate that part, because you're going to make like a final perfect version of your text, okay? You're going to have a great resource to refer to in the future, okay? The second part of this tip is using the discussion clock. So this one is perfect for the essays. sometimes my students tell me, I don't know what to write about. Okay, I haven't got any idea, so I don't have a flow of ideas. So that's what's gonna help you to have the ideas. When you read the topic that you have to write about, let's take e-learning. Okay, nowadays it's a huge topic because of COVID-19. So a lot of us had to adapt like to a new way of learning. So I want you to consider this topic from a variety of different perspectives. We can talk about it from an economic perspective, from a social perspective, scientific perspective, health perspective. Okay, so all of these things are going to help you to formulate your arguments. Okay, whether you're going to write an opinion essay or for and against essay, that's what's going to help a lot. So for every topic, like you can use different areas. Of course, not all of them are going to be applicable at the same time. It usually depends on the topic that you're writing about. Number 3 is using synonyms of basic adjectives and verbs. Okay, I'm pretty sure that you are aware what I'm talking about here, and you're able to list those basic adjectives and verbs straight away. So basic adjectives are adjectives like good, nice, interesting, beautiful. We don't want them in your text or your speaking, okay? We will try to eliminate them and substitute them with their better versions, with the synonyms that are more specific, more content specific, relatable, and just better. Same thing with the verbs. I'm gonna show you some examples here. Avoid verbs like and think. Same thing with the verb to be and to have. There are some better alternatives to use instead of using the verb to be, to have, like, and think. And let's jump into an example of that. Instead of saying that, instead of using the adjective beautiful, which is very overused, okay, you can use it to describe basically anything that you fancy visually. You can say that a person, a woman in this case, is stunning, that she's gorgeous. About a beautiful landscape or a view, you can say that it's breathtaking, that it's picturesque. Okay, all of these are synonyms of beautiful, and they sound much better. And whether you're going to write a description or you're going to describe in the speaking part, try to think about, always have my voice in your head telling you, beautiful? Nah. Nice? Nah. Okay, all of these basic adjectives, nope. Okay, we don't want them. Same thing with saying these kind of general things like, he's a good person. What does it even mean, he's a good person? Okay, is he caring, kind-hearted, reliable, respectful? You name it. Okay, so apart from the fact that everyone has a different definition of being a good person, like you need to be really specific, because when you say that your friend is a good person, I don't know what you refer to. Okay, what kind of qualities mean that he's a good person? Okay, be specific. Don't say these kind of vague general things. Okay, where's my slide for tip number 3? Okay. Okay, I already showed you the slide. Sorry. This is the second part of tip 3. And this is to use the basic verbs. And we've got I think, and then I came up with some alternatives for you to not to use I think. And hear me that. Don't use I believe as a substitute of I think. Okay? Nope. Okay, there are some other ways to express your opinion. Maybe in my opinion is also a little bit overused. So I believe, in my opinion, no. Let's try with something different. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ideas for you. And you can say, the way I see it, if you ask me, these are the most natural ways to say that you're going to express your opinion. Okay, so stick to those instead of I think, I believe, or in my opinion. Now, I like versus I don't like. So we are not in a primary school anymore. And when you use the sentences with I like and I don't like, you basically sound like a primary school child. Okay, saying things like, I like football. And if I hear this sentence, I imagine a 7 years old boy saying that, not 37 years old man. Okay, so instead of saying I like or I don't like, same sounding like a child, use the expressions that native speakers use. Say, I'm not really into football. Okay, or football is not my thing. Okay, you can say that it's not your cup of tea, it's not your jam. Okay, all these kind of expressions, but don't say I like or I don't like. I came up with some other alternatives too. If you're following me on social media, you have seen me posting those. We've got expressions like I'm passionate about, I'm crazy about something. They're quite informal, but you can freely use them in a speaking part of the exam because they're very natural and they have a stronger meaning than just I like. Okay. The verb like is reserved for Facebook. By the way, you can give me some likes under this video. I wouldn't mind that. But that's the only way that we're going to use like, okay? Not in your speaking exam. Okay, time for tip number 4. And that's using conversation fillers to sound more natural. Do you know what conversation fillers are? These are these little short words that we use in order to sound more natural in English. We use them to hesitate, to get some extra time when we want to think. So it's going to come really handy in the exam situation when you want to have some extra 3 seconds to think about what to say. So we've got some fillers such as, well, I mean, remember that we hesitate with in English. That's a note for Spanish speakers who hesitate with an open eh. Okay, so if you want to sound a little bit more natural in English, try to hesitate with your mouth closed. Same, Polish speakers hesitate with okay, so substitute with your mouth closed. Okay, just like a little trick, but it will make you sound more natural. Then we've got so, in fact, actually, anyway, by the way. All of these things mean nothing or not much, but it will make you sound more fluent if you use them in your speaking or in your informal writing too, because they're mostly used in speaking, but you can also use them in informal writings. Right, it's time for tip number 4. This one is a long one. So if you haven't been doing it for a while, it might be a little bit too late to start doing it now, because learning a language is a process. It's not gonna happen overnight. Okay, it's not gonna happen after you watch one season of your favorite series in English. Okay, you're not gonna just acquire the language by doing this one single action. No, you know that it takes time, dedication. It takes getting out of your comfort zone as well. Okay, not being afraid to feel ridiculous Just being brave, okay? You're being brave doing it, okay? Remember that. Like every time you feel a bit insecure about your English, about your pronunciation, remember that you're doing a great job because you're getting out of your comfort zone, and that's so crucial. I'm going to share some tips with you of how to surround yourself with English, how to immerse yourself in the language. But before I do that, I wanted to just make some things clear. I know that all of us are busy nowadays. These are the times that we are living in. Everyone is so busy. And that's why my tips are how to incorporate English into your existing daily routine. Sorry if I'm covering like a part of the slide, but I'm gonna speak on a slide anyway. And we're all busy. And sometimes it's really difficult to find this extra hour to study English during your day. And sometimes we just have a bad day. I know it, I get it. Or sometimes you have some other priorities in your life. You have a newborn child, or like wherever is the priority. English might not be your number one thing. Okay, so what you can do is you can incorporate it into your existing daily routine. How? I'm going to show you with this slide. So you can listen to podcasts when you're cleaning or cooking, okay? Basically doing chores. You can listen to audiobooks when you're driving or commuting, okay? This is perfect time to actually practice your listening skills. You can work out, do yoga, meditate in English. If you do it anyway, like in your native language, why don't you just switch and do the exactly same thing, but in English? Now, change your mobile phone language and your social media language into English. Trust me, we spend a lot of time on social media. I know you do. I do the same thing. So you would really benefit if you change your social media language into English, or if you follow people who post in English, and change your mobile phone language too. You will intuitively know where everything is, and just with no effort, you will learn some extra words. Now, if you want to start thinking in English, I would highly recommend writing your weekly planners, meal planners, to-do lists, shopping lists in English, okay? You can do it with some kind of narration. You can even try to write a journal in English. This one is excellent in order to start thinking in English. Because a lot of people tell me like, I keep translating in my head. If you want to stop translating in your head, you gotta teach yourself to think in English. But in order to think in English, you need to do certain things in English, like write in English. Writing and thinking will go together. Okay, so if you're planning, okay, what are we gonna cook today? And then you're writing down your ideas, or how was my day? What did I like the most about my day? And some journaling, okay, kind of having this self-talk with yourself in English, narrating everything that you're doing in English. That's gonna help a lot. Now, we're supposed to have fun, so consume entertaining content in English. Vlogs, YouTube videos, memes, TV series, all of the things that you do in your native language anyways, and do that in English and enjoy it. Start to enjoy the process and the fact that you understand more and more, because it's so great to be able to do that and to watch the movies and read the books in the original version. It feels really empowering and satisfying when you're able to do that. And last but not least, read and watch cooking demonstrations in English. So this one is connected to the first one. When you're cleaning, cooking, you can, same as you, if you're like me, and every time you're cooking something, like you're Googling the recipe, you can as well Google that in English and read this recipe in English. Just be careful with the American recipes because they have different measurements that the Europeans have, so be aware of that. Okay, so that was tip number 5. That means that we are halfway of the exam tips. I hope that you are enjoying them so far. I want to give you a break, a breath at this point because we are still having 5 more to go and a bonus one. I didn't tell you about the bonus, but there is a bonus tip too. So let's jump into tip number 6. And that's something that you probably don't want to hear if you are not a big fan of grammar. I am not a big fan of grammar, to be honest. Not a big fan of Spanish grammar. That's why I speak Spanish, but kind of ignoring grammar. But I know that you cannot do it for a long time, and especially you cannot do that if you're going to take the exam. So that's something that you need to do before the exam. You need to revise the basics. You need to feel comfortable using present, past, and future tenses / forms. And if you don't want to scroll now all of the course books, look for the materials, I've got your back because I have prepared a mini workbook. It's actually a part of a bigger workbook that also contains vocabulary and functional language, but I'm going to share with you the part with grammar. And I created it with you in mind, with people who are focused on the military context, because often in the course books, we are having like very general examples focused on general English. And in my workbook, I tried to focus on both, incorporating the military context into the examples that I'm using. So after the webinar, you're going to receive the webinar pack with all of the juicy PDFs. And that's going to be one of them because now we are starting the part with some PDFs. So I'm going to show you some examples of those. So this is my workbook. Here are some random pages taken from it with the examples. I'm focusing on the most important uses of certain verbal tenses and forms. And I think that this is what you need to know before the exam in order to use them confidently. Tip number 7. So I wanted to say 6 and 7 at once. Tip number 7. Practice descriptions and telling stories. And here I've got a bunch of tips for you, mini tips within a tip. When you're describing people, I want you to be aware that you might be asked one of the tricky-like questions. And they're tricky because they all look very similar. And the examiner may play that trick on you to check if you understand what are they asking. For example, let's go through these 4 questions, and I want to show you that each one of those questions focuses on a completely different thing. So we've got question number 1. What is she like? And here the question is about the person's, here, she, so her personality. The second one, what does she look like? This question is about the physical appearance of a person. Number 3, what does she like? This question is about hobbies and likes, the preferences that this person has. And the last one that is also tricky is how is she? And this one is not asking how is she physically. No. This one is number 2. This one is just a polite small talk. For example, imagine that you're meeting a friend in a street, you bump into someone, and the person is asking about your girlfriend, and he's asking, how is she? Okay, so the person is just making a polite small talk, showing some interest in you, your life, and your girlfriend. Next, describing places, events, situations. You might be asked in your exam to describe one of those. So when you describe places, when you describe anything here, I want you to focus on choosing good adjectives. But when you're describing places, focus on stimulating people's senses, okay? Make them feel your description. So stimulate their eyes with those vivid descriptions. Stimulate their hearing with intense sounds. Stimulate their smell and taste with mouth-watering descriptions of the food. Okay, if you're talking about the holiday destination, think about how this place smells, how this place feels, how does it sound. Okay, all of these little details will make your description more intense, and that's what we want. We don't want a description that says that it's a beautiful place, because that makes me feel nothing. Okay. And finally, when you describe events and situations, focus on emotions and feelings. How did this make you feel? Okay, that's what I want to know here. Now, when you're telling stories, now we're jumping from descriptions to stories, use narrative tenses. This is why in the previous part, I mentioned revising tenses, revising present, past, and future tenses. Past tenses are going to be really useful in telling stories. So we gotta revise especially past simple, past continuous, and past perfect and continuous. And I listed some uses of them. What do you use them for? But I hope you know that, but just a reminder. And use linking devices in order to put your story, like story events, in order. Next, then later on, the following day, okay, guide the listener, not the reader, the listener through your story. In this case, the examiner. Guide the examiner through your story. Now, in order to make your story more engaging, I want you to use some interesting collocations. Instead of saying he started crying, say he burst out crying, or I couldn't help laughing, instead of saying I started laughing. Okay, there are some other ways to say the same things that bring more meaning, and that's what we want. Phrasal verbs when you're telling a story, and then it turned out that when you're going to say something about turn of action, okay, that something turned out to be different than you expected. Or this part, like when I look back on my childhood, I remember, okay, and sharing some memories. So incorporating some phrasal verbs in your stories. Again, use a variety of verbs. He whispered, he yelled, he hesitated, he stared at me, okay? Instead of saying said and looked, okay? There are so many different verbs that you can use instead. And finally, make comments related to emotions. Remember how you felt in those situations that you're talking about. So here I got some examples like, I couldn't believe it. And you need to add some intonation to it. You cannot say, couldn't believe it. Okay? No, you need to feel it. I couldn't believe it. Or I was speechless. I was devastated. I was shocked. Okay, add some emotions to your speech. This will make you sound way more natural. Even exaggerate a little bit, still better than totally flat intonation, okay? Because you kind of sound ironic. Tip number 8, revise formal and informal language functions. So the exam is all about language functions. So some things that you're expected to use in a language. I'm going to show you some examples of that, like thanking somebody, inviting, apologizing, refusing the invitation. Okay, so I divided them into 2 parts. I came up with some ideas of how you can do that in an informal way and in a formal way, because it's very distinctive. So let's go through one example of that. Okay, I'm not going to read all of them. Okay, you can pause the video, but I will also send you a PDF with this presentation, so you can see that later on. And let's take the first one, thanking somebody. You can say, oh my God, thanks a lot, or cheers in British English. That's the way to thank somebody in an informal way in British English. Or I owe you one. That's another way to say thank you for something. Formal. I would like to thank you for whatever you're thanking the person for. I'm very grateful for your help, for whatever this person did for you. And I really appreciate your help, contribution, advice, whatever it is that you're thanking for again. So take a look at all of the examples that I came up with. They're gonna be really useful because you'll be asked to do those things, whether in a role play or in the speaking part or in your letter, in the informal letter especially. So be aware that it's really important for you to know those things. Then there is the second part. This one is with giving advice, asking for information, so focusing on direct and indirect questions, agreeing with someone, and disagreeing. Everything divided into informal and formal way of doing that. So I hope that it's going to be useful. I really do. Let me know after the webinar if you found this part helpful. Number 9. Learn the most mispronounced and misspelled words and ranks. You wouldn't believe how many people mispronounce some basic words and some basic words related to the army and army ranks. So I prepared a list of 20 the most mispronounced words, as well as the list of 20 the most misspelled words. This is based on my experience of working with students, some things that I see on a daily basis, some mistakes that I see being made daily. So this is another PDF that you're gonna get from me. And here you have some screenshots of that PDFs that will get straight to your inbox after the webinar. And take a look at the ones that are misspelled, okay? Analyze them, check yourself. You can ask another person to read these words to you, and then you try to write them down, and you'll be able to track like if you are actually writing them down correctly or not, okay? Test yourself, okay? And let me know what was the result of that, okay? I'm really curious. Maybe you're a spelling master. I had some students that were absolutely great at spelling and some that were absolutely rubbish at spelling. So you never know, okay? And the other one, commonly mispronounced words. Okay, so this one, I want you to do this exercise with the dictionary that you're using. The one that I always recommend, I personally love, is word reference. So in word reference, you can also hear those words in the American pronunciation and in the British pronunciation, even some other pronunciations if you fancy them for some reasons and you want to focus on Australian English or Canadian English, you can find them there too. Not with all of the words, but with most of the words, you can find them there. So take a look at them. And I wanted to draw your attention to the military ones. Okay, so these are 2 military ranks that people tend to mispronounce. And you probably know which ones I'm talking about. I'm talking about colonel and lieutenant or lieutenant, okay, because they're quite different in British and American English. So pay attention to those because they're very commonly mispronounced. Okay, and now we are at tip number 10. We got almost to the end of the presentation, and it's about reading authentic texts. And again, I've got your back on this one because I have prepared a list of reading resources with the websites that I recommend to use in order to practice your reading skills. And it's all divided into levels. So whatever level you're preparing for, you can check it on the list, because under the link to each website, I say if it's for level 1, 2, 3, or 4, or a few of them. Okay, so I'm going to show you the PDF. Probably you cannot see it very clearly now, but you're going to receive the PDF version of that in your webinar pack. So check it out, because it's gonna be really useful if you wanna keep working on your reading skills before the exam. I got you covered. And I've got a bonus tip for you. Okay, so as I said, there are 10 tips, but there is one bonus tip. And this is something, it might be obvious for some people, but it might be like a light bulb moment for some of them, like mind-blowing ones. And that's why I decided to talk about how to make sure you ask for repetition and clarification correctly. Because for sure you will need to ask for repetition and clarification in the exam. Okay, well, not for sure, but it's quite likely that you will. And you can do it in a way that will make you sound more fluent. Okay, so something that it's supposed to be a disadvantage because like you didn't understand something, you can actually go out of this situation winning, because you will show a lot of fluency in the way you ask for clarification or for repetition. Okay, that's a simple trick that you can play on the examiners in order to get some extra points. So we've got, first of all, do not ever say, what? Okay, please don't say that. I hope you know that you're not supposed to do that. But if there is one thing that I want you to take from this webinar is this, like, do not say what, okay? Because it's very rude to say that in English. Okay, maybe it's not rude to say that in your native language, although I suppose it is, then you're absolutely not supposed to use that in the exam situation. You can use it in some informal situations with your friends, or if somebody is bothering you, but do not use it in your SLP/STANAG 6001 exam. Okay, so these are some 3 ways to use instead of saying what. You can say, sorry, excuse me, pardon, or actually 4, because this one is an extra one. And when I use this one, I feel like an English gentleman or like an English lord having tea. Okay, so it's this one. I beg your pardon. It always makes me laugh because it sounds so sophisticated to me. But yeah, feel free to use it if you want to sound a little bit more, sound and feel a little bit more sophisticated. That's the one to go for. Then, when you want to ask for clarification, repetition, what basically to repeat what the other person said, instead of saying famous, can you repeat? Okay, don't say, can you repeat? Because again, you sound like a primary school child. Say, come again. Say, what was that? Say, sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Okay, this is a way to show that you did not understand what the other person said, but you are winning because you're using very fluent ways to show that. Or if you really, really feel that you want to use the word repeat, which is not necessary in order to ask for repetition, but if for some reason you really feel that you need to use that word, say, would you mind repeating that? Okay, instead of, can you repeat? Would you mind repeating that? Sounds so much better. Okay, so that was my bonus tip. And my final slide is this one. I keep my fingers crossed for you in your exam. break a leg. That's the way to wish somebody good luck, if you didn't know. And please let me know after the webinar, what are your thoughts about it? If you have any further questions, what do you think about my webinar PDF pack? If you find it useful, and basically anything that you would like to share with me after that. It was the first time I did something like that, so I would really appreciate your feedback. And yeah, I want to hear from you. And I will see you again in my social media if you're following me on Facebook or on Instagram. And I will keep doing my best and trying to show you what I know and share it with you and serve you in the best way possible. Teaching is my passion. I love being a teacher. I love showing up there and being there for you. So if there is anything that you would like to ask me, do not hesitate to send me a DM. I'm there for you. And that's it for today. Thank you for taking your time to be here with me, and I will see you soon. And I'm thinking about making another webinar. I'm going to ask you soon, which topic do you prefer? So I'll be waiting for some feedback from you. I send you hugs from Spain and wish you all a wonderful evening, because you are watching it in the evening. I'm recording in the morning because I've got some daylight, but you're watching it probably in the evening or whenever you're watching it. I want you to know that I wish you all the best in your exam, and I wish you a wonderful day. Goodbye.